Today, we explore Indigenous rights under Section 35 of the Constitution Act, 1982. This section recognizes the profound importance of Indigenous peoples' inherent rights within Canada's legal framework. Before 1982, Aboriginal and treaty rights lacked constitutional protection, often subject to unilateral government actions. Section 35 marked a significant shift, formally entrenching these rights in the Supreme Law of Canada. This was a direct result of Indigenous groups' efforts to ensure their rights were recognized during the patriation of the Canadian Constitution. Section 35, subsection 1 states, "The existing Aboriginal and treaty rights of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada are hereby recognized and affirmed." This subsection lays the foundation for understanding Indigenous rights and the ongoing journey toward reconciliation. Section 35, subsection 2 defines Aboriginal peoples of Canada to include three distinct groups: the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. First Nations are diverse Indigenous peoples, not Inuit or Métis, encompassing hundreds of distinct communities across Canada. The Inuit are Indigenous people primarily inhabiting the Arctic regions of Canada, with a unique cultural heritage. The Métis are a distinct Indigenous people with mixed Indigenous and European ancestry, primarily residing in the Prairie provinces and parts of Ontario and British Columbia. Aboriginal rights are inherent, stemming from the original occupation and use of the land by Indigenous peoples before European contact. These rights are not granted by the Crown, but arise from Indigenous peoples' own occupation of their territories and their ongoing social structures and customs. Treaty rights are rights set out in agreements between Indigenous groups and the Crown, recognizing specific entitlements like land and resources. These treaties are considered binding obligations on both parties, often viewed by Indigenous peoples as agreements between sovereign nations. The interpretation of Section 35 has been shaped by numerous court cases, with R. v. Sparrow in 1990 being a landmark decision. This case established that the Musqueam First Nation had an ancestral right to fish, which had not been extinguished. The Supreme Court held that government regulation of Aboriginal rights must be justified and consistent with the government's fiduciary duty to Indigenous peoples. This introduced the Sparrow test for determining when governmental infringement on Aboriginal rights is justifiable. Another crucial aspect is the duty to consult and accommodate, which arises when the Crown contemplates actions that may affect Aboriginal or treaty rights. This duty requires meaningful consultation with Indigenous groups, taking into account their perspectives and concerns. It also requires the government to reasonably address concerns and seek ways to minimize or avoid adverse impacts on their rights. This duty is grounded in the honor of the Crown and its fiduciary duty to Indigenous peoples, ensuring a respectful relationship. Section 35 is considered a vital step towards reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and the Crown. The recognition and affirmation of these rights provide a legal and moral foundation for addressing historical injustices and building a more equitable future. While progress has been made, challenges and debates persist, such as the ongoing discussion around the right to Indigenous self-government. Section 35 continues to evolve through judicial interpretation and ongoing dialogue, shaping the future of Indigenous rights in Canada.